The action on Mike McDonald. King Jack off. It's been folded to him on the button. And Mike's raising to 44,000. Viktor Blom has ace jack in the big blind.
How much did you start down with?
Like 450.
Blom's got McDonald dominated. Kid's got an intense gaze.
There's the re-raise from Viktor. To the delight of his railing crew, he makes it 126,000.
Viktor's got an insane rep, so when he's 3-betting here, he's doing it for value.
On.
Mike shoves.
All in.
Now, unless Viktor's picked up some kind of crazy tell, I assume he's going to call.
He calls.
Mike was in a tough spot. He probably could have called, but shoving's perfectly fine too, but only because they're not on the bubble yet and ICM isn't as much of a factor.
So McDonald is at risk. And he's a 3-1 underdog. But there's a king.
Mike McDonald taking it to the streets.
Timex supporters. Isildur supporters. McDonald now an 86% favorite to double up. Make that a 93% favorite. He only has to fade an ace on the river, and he will double up to 925,000.
And Viktor will take a huge hit to his stack.
The river card is an ace!
Oh, brutal river for Mike McDonald.
And that will send Mike McDonald to the rail in 7th place.
And Viktor Blom is smiling. He is a human being.
Viktor Blom has ace-queen suited.
You would usually expect a 3-bet here from a player out of position.
Viktor calls.
Very sneaky. This is Viktor's way of pre-flop trapping.
Galen Hall gives up the big blind. We go heads up to the flop. Jack 5-7 with 2 hearts.
Action flop. Viktor's checking to the original raiser. 2 overs and a flush draw is usually a time when you want to get more money in.
Jonathan bets his top pair. We can see that with those 2 overs and that flush draw, Viktor is a statistical favorite.
Of course he's not folding. He could even raise for value against Jonathan's range.
He does raise, makes it 215,000.
If he knows Jonathan's never folding a pair, a straight draw, or a smaller flush draw, then he's way ahead of Jonathan's range. Nut flush draws are good, McKay.
Jonathan is going to re-raise, makes it 386,000.
Now, even though it might look like Jonathan's turning his hand to a bluff, Viktor would sometimes have worse hands and often have worse draws in this spot, so he's pretty much also raising for value against Viktor's range.
Raised.
4-bet coming.
575.
575.
And a cheeky Swedish smirk.
You think he likes his hand?
I'm all in.
All in.
Jonathan shoves.
75,000. Jonathan moves all in.
Yeah. I call.
And Viktor calls.
I think Viktor's going to like what he sees. Jonathan can't like this. He's going to have to dodge more than Tony Blair at a press conference.
Well, Viktor has 15 outs twice, and Jonathan Duhamel is the player at risk. He needs those jacks to hold to survive. 7 of hearts on the turn, but a jack or a 7 will see Duhamel reclaim the lead. 4 outs for Jonathan, a 10% chance of survival. Viktor's flush holds. So Duhamel exits in 4.
Yeah, man. Look, take it down, man. Take it down.
Joe, it's time to step inside the mind of Galen Hall. We're going to play this next hand from his perspective.
We're going to sweat with Galen, something many of our female viewers are hoping to do one day. Kidding! We don't have any female viewers.
My wife watches. Granted, it's for your jokes, but... Viktor raises the button, 55,000. Galen has queen jack suited and will 3-bet from the small blind, makes it 125 total.
I like the 3-bet because we've got a fairly strong hand, we're out of position, and we're certainly deep enough.
Viktor's going to call. He'll play the flop in position.
The just call means he'll have hands like aces, kings, and queens less often.
What a flop for Galen. King jack 6 with 2 spades. His second pair and the flush draw. He has the betting lead. He continues for 175,000.
This is a pretty bomb flop for us. We should have no probs getting some more money in on this flop.
Viktor calls.
Really hoping for a spade here.
Was the 4 of clubs.
Now, we could fire here, but these guys are pretty deep, and you don't want to get raised off of it.
Galen has checked.
If you're going to check, it should be with the intent of inducing a bluff from a worse hand, though. There is no check folding here.
275,000.
275,000.
Again, I like just calling here because our hand is strong, but not crazy strong, and we don't want to get raised off of it.
Galen does make the call.
Viktor seems a little surprised.
7 of hearts on the river.
If only we had a brick draw, we would have made the nuts.
Galen checks.
575,000.
Viktor bets again. Is he trying to buy it? Or do you think he's got the king?
This is a really sick spot. Viktor's very likely to value bet any hand better than ours, and I think also fairly likely to check back most hands that we're beating. The only hand worse than ours that he wouldn't bet is probably ace-jack, but he'd very likely play any hand queens or better just like this. James, I'm leaning toward fold.
You got a jack?
Duh.
Duh, get with it, Viktor.
There's the smirk again.
You think this kid needs to work on his live tells?
Galen lays it down. Viktor did have a king.
Nice lay down us. Okay, and Galen too.
I was wrong there.
I had a jack and a flush draw.
Really?
Yeah, so if you raise flop and I 3-bet, I would get an in for sure.
I was close raising the flop, actually. Really close.
Then you would have all the chips.
Maybe.
Definitely.
Aces for Viktor Blom in the small blind.
It's a pretty good hand.
You're a master of understatement, Stapleton. He raises to 150,000. Nines for Galen Hall in the big.
Three-handed, this is a super cooler.
All in.
Cool.
Galen shoves. Of course, Viktor insta-calls.
All in.
Those nines do hit though, don't they?
Little wishful thinking. We know Viktor's been winning his flips, but let's see how he does when he's ahead.
One time in 5, Galen Hall will get there and survive.
I know the Hanson boys here are rooting for Viktor.
No 9 on the flop.
Galen with only 2 outs, no backdoors, no nothing. Their boy is only 2 cards away from being heads up for the title.
9% equity for Galen Hall, a 9% chance of survival. That's now down to 5% with 1 card to come.
These cards are getting further away from a 9.
Galen Hall started the day as chip leader. Now he's on the verge of elimination.
A veritable who's who of poker here for the sweat.
The river is not a 9. Viktor's aces hold.
Really nice playing with you. Thank you.
Nice playing with you. Good luck.
Galen Hall goes out in third, cashing for over
I
470,000.
told you, we've been buddies all day.
From the first.
From the first day next to each other.
So here we go, heads up for the title. Viktor Blom in the small blind, on the button, first to speak. Looking down at 7s. Notice, as we're at the business end, the shades have gone on. Viktor raises to 120,000.
Maybe those shades will hide some of his live tells.
Pocket 8s for Dan Shak.
I like a re-raise here against Viktor, unless you're planning to trap.
Well, Dan elects to call.
So trap it is.
Whoops. There's a 7 on the flop.
This board isn't too scary for 2 8s either. Dan might not get off so easy.
He's checked to the razor. And Viktor continues for 130,000.
Well, he's not folding. How bad's it going to be for Dan Shak?
He decides to check raise. He's made it 330,000.
I'm not a huge fan of this raise, and not just because he's drawing super thin. Viktor's just never going to be calling with a worse than a pair of 8s, and he's never folding better. I think if Dan wanted to get more money, and he should have done it before the flop.
Well, Viktor is called. There's now 920,000 in the middle. An ace on the turn. Doesn't look like it's going to slow Dan down. He's reaching for chips, and he's betting 500,000.
This is a pretty odd bet. At this point, Dan's pretty much bluffing.
Viktor makes the call.
Viktor really doesn't have to do much here. Dan's doing all the work for him.
The pot has ballooned to nearly 2 million. The river is the 3 of diamonds.
For his sake, I hope Dan loses the nerve to fire this last barrel. On the turn, he was pretty much bluffing. Now, he's 100% bluffing.
How much is he going to bet? The answer is 700,000.
700,000.
Cool.
Viktor calls.
Very easy just call. Whoops.
And he'll win that pot of 3.3 million with his set of sevens. Dan in the small, looking down at ace-5 suited. He raises to 155,000. King-queen for Viktor.
Typically, we'd see a 3-bet here.
Well, Viktor just calls, so we go to the flop.
Surprising just call.
6-9-7 rainbow.
Shak's got the best hand with ace high, as well as some draws to a gut shot and backdoor flushes.
Goes check, check. Well, there's the flush draw for Shak, but Viktor takes the lead with top pair.
Action card.
Looks like Viktor's going to lead. He bets 180,000.
Dan's got plenty of equity.
All in.
He shoves.
How much?
Well, that should get the attention of the rail. I think Viktor's got way enough chips to make this call without sweating it too much.
If he does call, there is a 66% chance that he will win his first ever live title.
Cool.
He has called.
I got outs.
Dan Shak drawing to a heart, an ace, or an 8. 15 cards that would stop Viktor Blom from winning the 2012 PCA Super High Roller. Will the Queens hold?
Ace.
They do! It's all over!
Somebody call the Blom squad because this kid is blowing up.
Yeah, you killed me, heads up.
To the Viktor go the spoils, $1.25 million.